My name is Alarowin, daughter of no one important, born in a thatched hut outside the western border of the Silvercrest Pack. The wolves in the palace call me Little Omega when they remember my name at all. Before everything changed, before he changed, I used to think that was all I would ever be. I never imagined that the Alpha King, Alpha Kale Thornvale, ruler of the Silvercrest, the most feared wolf in the Northern Territories, would look at me, speak to me, or touch me. But that was before desperation carved my choices into something darker. Before sickness wilted my mother's lungs and turned every breath she took into a painful rattle. Gold! That was what opened the first door. Gold, and the sound of my mother struggling to inhale. I was assigned the late-night corridor rounds in the East Wing, quiet, half-forgotten hallways where ancient tapestries drooped and dust gathered in corners like secrets. I loved that shift because no one noticed me. No one pulled me by the arm to scrub harder or walk faster or bow lower. I could breathe, but that night someone else was there. I heard the heavy footfall first, the unmistakable tread of an alpha who didn't care who knew he was coming. And then he stepped out of the shadows, tall and broad, wearing only loose night trousers, his dark hair unbound and wild around his face. Alpha Kale looked like the night itself had sculpted him and set him loose to stalk the halls. I froze. My body bowed instinctively. "Look at me," he said. His voice carried authority so naturally that even the air obeyed. I lifted my gaze slowly. His silver eyes, moonlit and cold, dragged over me with unreadable intensity. "What is your name, Omega?" "Ilara, my lord." He studied me, head tilted slightly. Then he reached into the pocket of his trousers and revealed a gleam of gold. 1 coin, more than I earned in a year. He placed it into my palm with deliberate slowness. "You will come to me tonight," he said. "You will warm my bed. No questions, no words, no expectations." I should have refused. I should have run. But the weight of the coin in my palm felt like hope, like medicine, like my mother breathing again. "Yes, my lord." That was how it began. The first night, my hand shook as I stepped into his chamber. His scent, cedar, stormwind, iron, filled the air and filled me. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, shirtless, his muscles cut like stone. He didn't smile. Alpha Kale never smiled. "You came," he murmured, pleased but unsurprised. "I needed the coin, my lord." "Good," he said. "Honesty suits you." He rose and approached me. I felt small, fragile. But when he touched me, he was surprisingly gentle, firm, commanding, but careful. Not a man who needed to take, a man who expected to be given. And I gave. I gave because I had to. Afterwards, he placed another coin in my hand. "For your mother," he said. The second night was different. He didn't let me leave. Not immediately. Instead, he asked, "Why did you choose servitude? You're educated. You speak well. You read." I blinked. "You noticed that?" "Of course." He watched me like I was a puzzle he intended to solve. And when he touched me that night, there was something else beneath the dominance. Something restrained. Something curious. The third night, he didn't pretend he wasn't waiting for me. He paced his room when I arrived, restless and annoyed. "You're late." "I had to help bathe the Queen Mother, my lord." His jaw twitched. "You serve everyone but yourself." I didn't know how to answer. I wasn't used to being seen. That night was the softest, the slowest. I didn't know if he felt anything. I didn't dare hope. But when he brushed the hair from my face as though I wasn't just an Omega he paid, something inside me trembled. That was how the arrangement continued. Night after night, coin after coin, my heart learning foolish rhythms it had no business learning. But everything changed the night his cousin arrived. Prince Roderick Thornvale, son of a powerful allied alpha, swaggered through the palace doors with a smile too sharp and eyes too hungry. I had caught him staring before, years ago, when I first became a palace maid. He had cornered me once in the gardens, breath thick with wine, telling me I'd look better carrying his pups. I had escaped by pretending the Queen Mother was calling. I thought he had forgotten me. He had not. At dinner, he made sure everyone remembered. "I see little Alara is still here," Riderick said casually, slicing his meat. "Still refusing to be mine, even after all these years." My fork slipped from my fingers. The Queen laughed, sharp mocking. "Try harder, Riderick. Omegas pretend to be modest, but they all follow strength. And perhaps she's tired of serving a bachelor alpha who refuses to settle." Kale's jaw clenched so tight I heard the crack. "That is enough," he growled. The table hushed. My skin burned under their eyes. The humiliation was sharp enough to bleed. I excused myself quickly, trying to hide the tremor in my hands. I didn't make it far before footsteps followed. I knew who it was before I turned. Riderick grinned. "I'll only be a moment," he called back to the Queen, then slipped after me. I walked faster. He quickened. By the time I reached my small chamber, I was gasping. I shut the door behind me, and then the latch snapped as the door shoved inward. He stepped inside, smiling too wide. "You should have chosen me years ago," he said softly. "But no matter. You'll be mine now. My cousin can't have every treasure in the palace." I stumbled backward. Please. You have no choice, Alara. The Alpha is my blood. You are nothing." He lunged, and then the door slammed open so violently it cracked. "Kale!" He moved like a storm given flesh. 1 second, he was in the doorway. The next, he had Riderick by the throat, slamming him against the wall with a snarl that shook the room. "You touch one of my workers again," Kale roared, "and I will break every bone in your body." He didn't say Omega. He didn't say servant. He said my. He punched Riderick once, twice, fists fueled by a rage I had never seen in him. By the time he released him, Riderick collapsed to the floor, coughing, eyes wild. Kale stepped in front of me, chest rising and falling like he was holding back a shift. "Leave," Kale commanded. Riderick scrambled out, slamming the door behind him. Silence. Then Kale turned to me. "Alara," he said softly, voice trembling with something I didn't understand. "Are you hurt?" I shook my head. He exhaled, long and unsteady. He reached for me, then stopped himself. His hands curled into fists. "From this moment," Kale said, "no one touches you. No one speaks to you without my approval. I will ensure your protection. You have my word." I should have bowed. I should have thanked him. But all I could do was stare at him as the truth began to bloom, slow and terrifying inside my chest. The Alpha King cared, not as a master, not as a buyer, not as a man who used my body in the dark. Something had shifted. Something had begun. That night was the end of the arrangement, and the beginning of everything else. For the first time since entering the palace 3 years ago, I did not return to Alpha Kale's chambers that night, not as a pay distraction, not as a secret comfort, not as the Omega who traded her body for gold. He did not summon me, and I did not go, but I also did not sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Riderick pinning me against the wall, his breath dripping with entitlement. Worse, I saw Kale, my Alpha, standing between us like a barrier forged from fury and instinct. I should have feared him. Any sane Omega would have. Instead, I kept replaying the way he'd said my name. Alara. Soft. Unsteady. As though he was unfamiliar with tenderness, but unwilling to let it go once it slipped from him. Morning came too quickly. I heard the palace stir around me. Maids collecting linens, Omegas bustling through corridors, the Queen Mother's nurses preparing her morning herbs. I washed my face, braided my hair, and tied my apron. Anything to ground myself. Anything to keep from thinking about the way Kale had looked at me after beating his cousin bloody on my floor. When I stepped into the hallway, I found Tova, one of the senior maids, standing with a bundle of folded fabrics. "You're assigned to East Hall today," she said without looking up. "But first, Alpha Kale told me to bring you this." She thrust something into my hands. A cloak. A rich, royal blue cloak with silver embroidery at the hem. The kind given to palace staff who served directly under the Alpha's protection. I blinked. There must be a mistake. No mistake. Tova huffed. He delivered it himself at dawn. Nearly scared the laundry girls to death. My stomach twisted. Did he say why? Only that you were to be properly clothed and not paraded in scraps around dangerous wolves. Tova snorted. Ilara, did you anger him? Or please him? I cannot tell the difference with that man. Neither could I, but I slipped into the cloak anyway. It was warm, heavy, strong. It made me stand straighter. I had barely reached the East Hall when Lisa, a young Omega, tugged urgently at my sleeve. Ilara, come quickly. The Queen Mother is asking for you. The Queen Mother rarely asked for anyone. Her condition had worsened over the past moon, leaving her bedridden and racked with fever. I hurried after Lisa without hesitation. Inside the Queen Mother's chamber, the air smelled of damp lavender and medicated herbs. She lay lethargic under thick quilts, breathing heavily through parted lips. Her lady-in-waiting gestured sharply. She's burning again. Bring fresh water. And cool cloths, quickly. I moved on instinct. Caring for the sick had become second nature, born from years of tending to my mother. I soaked a cloth in cool water and pressed it to the Queen Mother's forehead, whispering soothingly. Her breathing steadied, just a little. She responds to you, her attendant observed quietly. Strange. She rarely tolerates anyone near her when the fever rises. I didn't know what to say. I simply kept working, changing cloths, refreshing water, adjusting pillows until her trembling eased. That was how Cale found us. The door opened silently. Even without turning, I felt his presence, the shift in the air, the tension, the weight of a man built to command armies and bend nations. Ilara, he said. I froze, not in fear, in awareness. He moved closer, boots silent against the stone floor. His gaze skimmed over the Queen Mother, then landed on me. She sleeps easier, he murmured. Yes, my lord, I whispered. The fever is slightly down. He nodded, a muscle flickering in his jaw. He looked tired, genuinely tired, like he hadn't slept after leaving my chamber. You did well, Cale said. Praise from an Alpha is rare. Praise from Cale Thornvale is almost mythic. My cheeks warmed. I only did what I was taught. No, he said softly, you did more. The room fell silent. The attendants watched us with wide eyes, as though witnessing something they couldn't name. Cale straightened. Ilara, walk with me. My heart stalled. Now, my lord. Yes. We walked the long corridor overlooking the palace gardens. Outside, early frost clung to the roses, turning them pale and brittle. Cale spoke first. What happened last night will not happen again. I swallowed hard. Your cousin is no longer welcome near you, Cale said sharply. No longer welcome in this palace without supervision. His fists clenched at his sides. I should have sensed his intentions sooner, but I was distracted. By what? By me? No, that was impossible. He turned to face me fully, and the depth in his silver eyes made my breath catch. Ilara, I need you to understand something. I'm listening, my lord. You are no longer available to anyone, including me. A quiet shock rolled over my skin. You mean the arrangement? It ends, he said firmly. Tonight. Forever. Something inside me cracked with a sound I couldn't hear, but could feel. I bowed my head. Yes, my lord. As you wish. He exhaled sharply, almost frustrated. This is not punishment. I didn't think it was. Then what is that look? He demanded. I don't know, I whispered. I suppose. I grew used to your company. His eyes softened in a way I had never seen before. Ilara, he said quietly, you deserve to be touched for more than coin. Heat rushed to my chest. I gripped the edge of my cloak to steady myself. You will serve the Queen Mother directly from now on, Kale continued. No more scrubbing floors. No more night shifts. You will be under my personal protection. And he hesitated. And you will lead the domestic staff. My head snapped up. Lead. My lord, I'm not qualified. You are, he cut in. And I trust you. Trust. The word felt too large to hold. Do you accept the position? He asked. There was only one answer. Yes, Alpha. He exhaled slowly. Good. A shadow moved behind us. Tova peeked cautiously from the corridor corner. My lord, she stammered. A message from Prince Riderick. He requests a private meeting with. No, Kale snapped. Tova nearly dropped her tray. Kale stepped closer to me, lowering his voice. I will not allow anyone to corner you again. If Riderick approaches, you call for me. Do you understand? My pulse thundered. Yes. His gaze lingered on my face for a long, heavy moment. Then he turned and walked away. But the strange warmth he left behind stayed with me all day. Over the next week, palace life changed in ways I never expected. Maid stepped aside when I walked past. Warriors nodded with new respect. The Queen Mother reached for my hand during her fevers, whispering fragments of stories from her youth. Even Kale changed. Subtly, quietly, but undeniably. He watched me during meals, though he pretended not to. He lingered in corridors where he had no reason to be. He dismissed meetings early, only to appear moments later near wherever I happened to be assigned. He protected me, not with fists or threats alone, but with presence. One afternoon, as I carried a tray of fresh towels toward the Queen Mother's chambers, I heard a sharp voice around the corner. You think wearing that cloak elevates you. Riderick. My blood chilled. He stepped into view, eyes dark, lip curled. My cousin is a fool if he believes you deserve so much as a second glance. I tried to walk past him without engaging, but he grabbed my wrist. You are playing a dangerous game, Ilara. Before I could speak, a warning growl snapped through the hall. Kale! He was there in an instant, pulling me behind him with one swift motion. Remove your hand, Kale said, voice low and lethal. Riderick smirked. She's only an Omega. Kale moved so fast the air cracked. He slammed Riderick against the wall. Forearm pressed to his throat. You forget, Kale said, each word dripping with threat, that she is under my protection. Harm her, frighten her, or look at her again without permission, and I will strip you of your title. Riderick's eyes widened. You love her. Kale froze. My breath hitched. He released Riderick without answering, but the damage was done. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Kale turned to me. Are you hurt? No. His jaw clenched. Good. He strode away without another word, but I did not miss the tremble in his hands. Something inside Alpha Kale Thornvale was unraveling, and I was the thread he kept pulling. For days after Kale's confrontation with Riderick in the hallway, a strange tension wove itself through the palace, thin and taut, like a thread stretched to the point of breaking. Warriors spoke in low voices. Maids whispered when they thought I wasn't listening. Even the Queen Mother, half drifting between fevers, seemed to sense something shifting beneath the marble floors. But no one felt it more than I did. Kale avoided me. Not completely. He still appeared wherever I worked, still watched me more than he intended, still turned toward me the instant he heard my footsteps. But there was distance in him now, deliberate distance. A tiny, careful gap he maintained as though afraid of what might happen if he allowed himself too close. I did not understand it. He had protected me. He had promoted me. He had ended our arrangement so I could reclaim dignity he believed I had lost. But now he acted as though being near me was dangerous. Not for me. For him. My duties grew heavier but more meaningful. Managing the domestic staff, meant early mornings, endless lists, disputes between maids, shift rotations, inventory checks, and constant oversight. It should have overwhelmed me. Instead, I found pride. For the first time in my life, I belonged somewhere not because of desperation, but because someone believed I was worthy. I didn't know whether that person was Kale or myself. Perhaps both. "Head maid Elara," Lisa said one morning as she hurried into the linen room. "The Queen Mother is asking for you." Did she wake with fever again? Yes. She's been restless for an hour. I followed immediately. Inside the Queen Mother's chamber, the tendons parted for me with surprising ease. She lay trembling under light blankets, her breath shallow, her eyes dim. I replaced the warm cloth on her forehead with a cooler one, humming softly. Her breathing steadied. "I remember that song," she whispered. My hand stilled. "My lady." "When Kale was small," she murmured. "I sang this to him during storms. He was frightened." Kale? Frightened? I could hardly imagine it. The alpha who faced down armies, who silenced rooms with a single look, who moved through the world like a blade honed by centuries of dominance, frightened? The Queen Mother smiled, faintly as if reading my thoughts. Even the strongest wolves were pups once. Her fingers wrapped weakly around mine. "You soothe him," she said. My pulse skipped. My lady." "You," she repeated, her eyes clearing momentarily. "He listens when you speak. He softens when you are near." Heat rose to my face. "I am only a servant." "No," she said with surprising firmness. "Not to him." Before I could respond, she drifted back into sleep. I lingered long after she settled, my mind spinning with her words. Not to him. What was Kale seeing when he looked at me? A worker? A responsibility? Something more dangerous? I didn't know, but fate rarely waits for clarity. The palace was thrown into chaos by midday. Riderick was gone, vanished, without permission, without notice, without guards. Worse, without his luggage, without his jewels, without his title seal. Kale's fury shook the hallways. I heard him before I saw him, his voice echoing through the central corridor. "Search every gate, every exit, every trail into the woods. He leaves with nothing of ours." Doors slammed. Warriors sprinted. Beta Garen barked orders with military precision. I stayed back. I always stayed back when Kale was in a rage. Not because I feared him, but because his anger was something sacred, something powerful, something not meant for outsiders. But then, Elara. His voice cut through everything. He was striding toward me, silver eyes blazing, shoulders tense beneath the weight of leadership. Warriors stepped aside as though sensing the danger spilling from him. "My lord," I said, bowing slightly. He stopped in front of me, towering and unreadable. "Did he speak to you?" Kale demanded. "Who?" "Riderick." His jaw clenched. "Did he approach you again?" "No, Alpha. Not since the last encounter." He stared at me for a long moment, searching for the truth in my face. When he found it, he exhaled in relief, so quietly I almost missed it. "He took something," Kale said darkly. "Information. Maps. Things he has no right to." My stomach sank. "Information about the palace?" "About you." The world stilled. I forced out a whisper. "Why would he?" "Because he wants to claim what is not his," Kale growled. "Because he believes hurting you will hurt me." "Hurt him?" I swallowed hard. "My lord, am I truly worth all this trouble?" Kale took a step toward me, then another, until he was close enough that I felt the heat from his skin. "Elara," he said softly, "you are trouble I would choose every time." The breath left my chest. He realized what he'd said a second too late. A flicker of panic, real, raw panic, crossed his expression before he looked away sharply. I mean," he corrected stiffly, "you are under my protection, and any threat to you is a threat to the palace." But the damage was done. The truth was out. He felt something. Something he didn't have words for yet. Before either of us could speak again, a warrior burst through the corridor doors. Alpha! We found Prince Riderick's trail leading toward the southern boundary. Kale's entire body sharpened. Prepare horses. Ready the trackers. I leave in 5 minutes. The warrior bowed and sprinted away. Kale turned back to me. You will remain inside the palace with guards posted at your corridor, he ordered. You do not leave the inner halls. You do not walk alone. You do not open your door unless you hear my voice. Yes, my lord. Elara. His voice dropped to something deeper, something not meant for the rest of the world. I will return. It was not an order. It was a vow. Kale left within minutes, riding at the head of a hunting party of 20 warriors. The sight of him, cloak whipping behind him, posture sharp and lethal, etched itself into my memory. The palace felt colder without him. That night, sleep refused to come. I stared at the ceiling of my small room, listening to the faint crackle of torches and the wind pressing against the windows. Every time my eyes closed, I saw Riderick's twisted smile. Every time my heart steadied, I remembered Kale's voice. You are trouble I would choose every time. Near dawn, exhaustion began to sink in. That was when the door creaked open. I bolted upright, heart hammering, only to see Kale step inside. He looked exhausted, dirt-smeared, cloak damp from the mist outside. But he was alive, and he had come to me first. My lord, I breathed. He shut the door behind him. His eyes swept over me, not hungrily, not possessively, but like a man verifying I was safe. Are you hurt? He asked. No. Did anyone come near you? No. His shoulders eased just barely. Riderick escaped, he said, but not with what he wanted. What happens now? Kale hesitated. Then he took a single step toward me, and another, until he stood only inches from my bed. Elara, he said quietly, I need you to trust me. I do. He looked pained at how quickly I answered. I will keep you safe, he vowed. From Riderick. From every threat beyond these walls. Even from myself, if it comes to that. I swallowed hard. My lord, why would I need protection from you? His voice turned rough. Because I am starting to want things I should not want. The room held its breath. So did I. Kale closed his eyes briefly, as though wrestling with a beast inside his chest. When he opened them again, the decision was made. From this night onward, he said, you will not fear me. You will not serve me in shadows. You will not be touched in the dark, like a secret. His voice softened, breaking at the edges. I will earn you. Before I could speak, before the heat in my chest could spill into words, he turned and disappeared into the corridor, leaving me trembling, breathless, and entirely undone. Kale's vow echoed through me long after he left my room. I will earn you. It was a promise no alpha made lightly, certainly not an alpha as feared, as disciplined, as emotionally barricaded as Kale Thornvale. Yet he had said it with a rawness that clung to me like a second skin. I hardly slept, and when dawn finally broke, the palace was already buzzing with rumor. Riderick's escape, Kale's fury, the tightened security. Every whisper brushed past me like gusts of wind. But no one dared speak to me directly. Not anymore. I was the woman the Alpha protected, the woman the Alpha sought out, the woman the Alpha would earn. No one knew what that meant. Not even me. I reported to the Queen Mother's chamber before sunrise. She slept lightly now, each hour unpredictable. When I stepped inside, I found her awake, eyes alert, back propped up by pillows. I dreamt of wolves circling, she said as I adjusted her blankets. And in the center stood my son, alone, restless. Her gaze sharpened, and beside him a woman whose face I could not see. Heat crept up my neck. My lady, I am old, child, not blind. A faint smile touched her lips. Kale's mood has changed. He watches the door when you leave. He listens differently when you speak. Her voice softened. He has chosen a path. Be certain it does not frighten you. I swallowed. I don't know what to do. You will, she said. In time. As I bathed her forehead with cool water, her hand covered mine briefly, frail but warm. A strange comfort washed over me. The Queen Mother was the only noble who had never treated me as lesser. I wondered if she knew how deeply that mattered. By the time I left her room, morning sunlight had begun piercing the palace windows, and Cale was waiting for me. He stood at the end of the corridor, arms folded, posture rigid. A guard was speaking to him, but Cale wasn't listening. His eyes were on me, the moment I emerged from the Queen Mother's chamber. The guard followed Cale's gaze, bowed and hurried away. Cale approached with measured steps. How does she fare? He asked. Her fever is steadier today, I replied, but she is very weak. Cale nodded, jaw tight with concern. You care for her well, he said. Better than anyone else. It's what I know, I murmured. I cared for my mother alone for years before coming here. He stilled. Elara, I've arranged for her treatment. My breath caught. My mother. Yes. He looked almost shy. I sent healers to her. The best. Under my personal command. An ache bloomed behind my ribs. Sharp, beautiful, terrifying. You didn't have to do that, I whispered. I know. His voice thickened. That is why I did. I stared at him, unable to speak. Cale looked away first, clearing his throat lightly as though the emotion had startled him. There's more, he added. I also changed your assignment. My pulse spiked. My lord, if I've done something wrong, You haven't. His expression softened. Quite the opposite. He gestured toward the hallway. Walk with me. We walked side by side through the palace, something no Omega in history had done with an Alpha without cowering 2 steps behind. Each stride echoed with the unspoken truth sitting between us. Cale led me toward the higher wings of the palace, the ones reserved for nobles, diplomats, and high-ranking warriors. My heart thudded. My lord, I murmured. This area is not for servants. It is now. We stopped before a broad wooden door, freshly polished, bearing no crest but far too fine to be a worker's quarters. Cale opened it. Inside was a spacious chamber with a fireplace, a writing desk, a small balcony overlooking the gardens, and a bed twice the size of my tiny one downstairs, a private washing basin, a silk rug. My throat tightened. Cale! I breathed before I could stop myself. His eyes flickered at the sound of his name. This will be your new room, he said gently. Close to the Queen Mother's chambers. Close to me if you need anything. I turned to face him fully. This is too much. No, he said quietly. Not for you. We stood in silence, the crackle of the fireplace filling the space between us. Then Cale said something that made the floor tilt beneath my feet. You are no longer a palace maid, Elara. The world slowed. What? I whispered. I've promoted you, he said. Officially. You will oversee all domestic operations, manage every servant, every maid, every schedule and supply. My breath trembled. Alpha nobles will not accept this. Omegas will obey. His eyes flashed with fierce certainty. Because I command it. I shook my head, slightly overwhelmed. Why would you risk your reputation for me? His jaw worked, struggling with a truth he wasn't built to share. Finally he said, low and rough, because you matter. He stepped closer, slowly, giving me every chance to retreat. I didn't. He lifted a hand, hesitating, then brushed a stray strand of hair from my cheek. His touch was gentle, reverent, nothing like the nights when dominance and hunger had driven him. Elara, he murmured, I have wronged you before, used you, taken from you in ways I cannot forgive myself for. You helped my mother, I whispered. That was the first thing I have ever done for you that wasn't selfish, he said. but it will not be the last. His fingers grazed my skin as he lowered his hand. From the doorway, a sudden voice interrupted us. Alpha Kale! We sprang apart. Beta Garen stood stiffly at the threshold, eyes carefully avoiding me. The council requests your presence, he announced. They wish to discuss the incident with Prince Riderick. Kale's expression darkened, tension rippling across his shoulders. I will join them shortly. Garen bowed and left. Kale looked back at me, regret flickering in his eyes for the moment we'd lost. I must go, he said. I know. He hesitated at the door. Elara, do you feel unsafe here? No, I said truthfully. Not with you. Something inside him unraveled, just a little. He exhaled. Then I will return when I can. And just before he left, he added in a voice meant for me alone. You do not walk alone anymore. Not in this palace. Not in this life. Then he was gone, leaving me in a room far too grand, far too warm, and far too close to the man who was slowly becoming my entire world. I could not sleep for days after the attack. Even though Alpha Kale had beaten his cousin until the guards had to pull him away, the memory of that night clung to me like frost on a window, cold, stubborn, impossible to wipe away. I could still feel Rogan's fingers clawing at my dress, could still hear the ragged sound of my own breath and Kale's snarl when he burst into the room. Get your hands off my staff, he had growled as his fists collided with bone. But there had been something more beneath that fury, something I had not known how to name then. Now, as I stood in the laundry courtyard hanging freshly washed linens, the bruise on my arm already fading, I felt eyes on me again. No footsteps approached, no shadow moved. Still, the sensation pressed against my skin like heat. Do not freeze like prey. His voice slid behind me, low, quiet, unmistakable. I turned. Kale stood near the water barrels, wearing simple training leathers, sweat glistening down the line of his throat. I lowered into a slight bow out of habit. Alpha. He grimaced. You do not have to call me that when we are alone. Alone. The word made my pulse skip. He stepped closer, not too close, but close enough that I could smell the forest spice scent of his skin. His shadow fell over the linens, darkening the pale cloth. Rogan will not trouble you again, he said. I have restricted him to the south wing, and guards are posted at night. I nodded, though fear still clung to me at odd hours like a phantom. And the bruise? Kale asked. The Alpha did not ask about injuries. Not to Omegas. Not to anyone, not like this. It's healing, I murmured. His jaw tightened. If he had gone any further, he inhaled sharply, I should have killed him. I didn't know how to respond to that. A shiver went down my spine, not of fear, but of something warmer, heavier. I want you safe, he added. Why? The question slipped out before I could catch it. Kale stilled, his gaze lowered to my arm, then returned to my eyes with a force that made my breath catch. There are reasons, he said quietly, that I am not ready to speak yet. He left before I could ask more. But it was that day when he walked away instead of hiding behind anger that something in me began to soften toward him. And over the months that followed, Kale would give me too many reasons to trust him. The first time he stood up for me after the attack. It happened in the hall outside the Queen's receiving chamber. I had brought a tray of herbal tea for her, carrying it carefully while maids whispered behind their hands. Since the night of the attack, rumors had spread faster than wildfire. Do you think the Alpha protects her because she's his pet? Maybe he pays her for more than cleaning. Their words cut, but I kept my head down, until one voice rose too loudly. She probably begged for it, one maid sneered. Omegas like her always do. I stopped walking, my chest constricted. Kale stepped into the corridor as if summoned by my shame. What did you say? His voice was calm, too calm. The maid swallowed hard. And nothing, Alpha. He took one slow step toward her. You insult a woman under my roof, a worker under my command. Another step. You suggest she welcomed harm. Her knees shook. Kale pointed to the guards. Remove her from the palace. She is dismissed permanently. The hall fell silent. He turned to me, then, softly, almost apologetically. No one insults you again. Understood. My throat burned as I managed to nod. This was the first time I saw the difference between his rage for dominance and his rage for justice. This time, he did not beat someone bloody. He simply used his authority like a blade. And I realized I had never once experienced what it felt like to be defended. The day he made me head of maids. It was unexpected. I had been in the Queen Mother's chambers for hours, tending to her fever with cool cloths and preparing ginger broth. The Queen Mother, gentle, frail, nothing like the Queen, patted my hand and whispered, "You are the only one who listens when I speak." When Kale entered the room, he paused in the doorway, watching me adjust her blankets, as tenderly as if she were my own mother. "You do more work than half the staff combined," he said later, when he found me cleaning the hearth. "And you do it without complaint." I shrugged. "It is my duty." "It is more than duty." He folded his arms. "As of today, you are head of maids. Your quarters will move to the north wing. Better pay, better conditions. Report directly to me, not the Queen." The broom slipped from my hands. "Why me?" "Because," he said simply, "you have earned it." But the truth I sensed, what he still refused to say, was that he trusted me, and maybe cared in ways he had not yet allowed himself to understand. The moment he stopped taking advantage of me, it happened quietly. No announcement, no explanation. One night, as I stood at his chamber door expecting the routine we both pretended was transactional, he opened the door only halfway. "You may go," he said. I blinked. "But the coins—" "I will continue sending them. For your mother's care." My throat tightened. "You don't want me to stay?" His jaw clenched. "I want many things I should not take. Not from you. Not like this." When he closed the door, gently instead of pulling me inside, I leaned against the hallway wall, trembling, not from rejection, but from something terrifying. Respect. For the first time, Kale was not taking. He was choosing restraint. And it terrified me more than his desire ever had, because restraint meant emotion, and emotion meant danger. And slowly, I saw him differently. Kale carried the Queen Mother's blankets himself when she shivered. He sent medicines to my mother anonymously, though I knew exactly who paid for them. He asked for my opinion on staff decisions. He listened when I spoke. The palace started seeing it, too, the way his gaze always found me, the way he stepped slightly in front of me in crowded rooms, the way he corrected anyone who dared to raise their voice at me. Even the Queen noticed. Her glares sharpened. Her whispers with Rogan grew longer. Something was brewing beneath the surface, but I was too caught up in the dangerous warmth blooming in my chest every time Kale said my name, because he no longer said it like a transaction. He said it like a vow he had not yet spoken aloud. The change came slowly, so slowly I almost missed it. A softer tone here, a lingering glance there, a question asked not out of protocol, but out of curiosity. Kale began to speak to me like a person he wished to understand, not a servant he needed to command. Yet the bond between us was still unspoken, unacknowledged, and dangerous. Very dangerous. Because the Queen's eyes had turned cold the moment she noticed her son's attention shifting, cold and calculating. But Kale either did not see it, or chose not to care. The Festival of Moons, where everything shifted. The palace was alive with the annual Festival of Moons, where Omegas traditionally blessed the torches and Betas carved sun symbols into wood for good fortune. I was supervising decorations in the central courtyard when Kale appeared beside me without warning. "You've been working without rest," he said. "That is the nature of the festival, Alpha." "You are head of maids now," he reminded me, stepping closer. "Delegate." The heat of his presence brushed the air around me. I kept my voice steady. It is easier to do some things myself. His lips twitched, not a smile exactly, but something softer. I know. He handed me a small parcel wrapped in dark cloth. A gift, he said. For me? I asked, stunned. He nodded. Open it. Inside was a moonstone pendant, glowing pale and iridescent, carved into the shape of a crescent wolf. I froze. Where did you find this? I had it made. He paused. For your mother. You said moonstone eases her night fevers. My breath caught. Alpha. It is not charity, he said firmly. It is gratitude. You've taken care of the Queen Mother for months. She sleeps easier because of you. The warmth blooming in my chest was almost painful. I bowed deeply. Thank you. He watched me for a long moment, his eyes unreadable. Wear it tonight. It suits you. I barely spoke for the rest of the afternoon, my mind spinning like a storm. Cale did not give gifts. Not personal ones. Not thoughtful ones. And certainly not to Omegas. That night, the moment he almost said it, at sunset the festival torches were lit, filling the courtyard with shifting gold light. As head of maids, I oversaw the ceremony from the upper balcony, my new place, far from the bustle of servants and closer to the nobles. Cale stood below with his advisors, tall and unyielding. And yet, several times, I felt his gaze tip upward toward me. When the moon reached its peak, I descended the steps to present the ceremonial flame to him. My hands trembled slightly as I held out the gilded torch. He took it, his fingers brushing mine. The contact sent a jolt up my arm. You look, he stopped. His throat bobbed. Different tonight. It is the same uniform, I said, trying to steady my breathing. No, he said softly. It is not. For a heartbeat, I thought he might say more. Something dangerous. Something he could not take back. Instead, he stepped away, raised the torch, and lit the final ceremonial flame. But his eyes kept returning to me, as if he, too, felt the line between us thinning, becoming something fragile and bright. The Queen's quiet threats. A few days after the festival, the Queen summoned me. Alone. She sat in her private salon, sipping wine, her jewels glittering in the lamplight. She did not look at me at first. You have grown comfortable here, she said finally. I bowed carefully. I only serve the palace to the best of my ability. Do not mistake my hospitality for fondness, she replied coldly. You are a stray we feed because my son insists on it. My stomach twisted. And yet, she continued, tapping her glass, I hear Cale granted you a new position, new quarters, new privileges. It was his decision, my queen. She tilted her head. Of course it was. He always had a soft heart, even if he hides it. But you, she smiled thinly, you must learn your place. I have never forgotten it. Then ensure you do not, she said. The Alpha deserves someone of his own rank, not a burden. The word struck like a blade. You may leave, she added, already waving me off. As I walked out, my breath was tight, my hands trembling. I had known the Queen disliked me, but now the hostility was no longer subtle. It was sharp and deliberate. And for the first time, I realized something unsettling. She didn't just dislike me. She feared what her son might feel for me. The night Rogan returned to provoke me. I thought I was safe from him. I was wrong. I was returning to my quarters when his voice slithered from the shadows. You move differently now, he sneered. Like you think you matter. I froze. Let me make this clear. He stepped forward, eyes gleaming. You are nothing. A maid who got lucky. The Queen will never let Cale have you. That decision is not yours to make, I managed, though my voice shook. Rogan's smile widened. I will make sure he marries someone worthy. And I will make sure you disappear from this palace before that happens. My heart pounded. Then footsteps. Heavy. Familiar. Cale emerged from around the corner, his eyes blazing gold. Disappear, he repeated quietly. Rogan slumped back, paling. Kale stepped between us, the fury rolling off him in waves. You speak to her again, and I will send you from this land with nothing but the clothes on your back. Do you understand? Rogan swallowed. She's manipulating you. Kale grabbed him by the collar, lifting him slightly. Your crimes are stacking. Test me again, and even the queen will not be able to shield you. When he finally released him, Rogan stumbled away, humiliated. Kale waited until he was gone before turning to me. His voice softened instantly. Did he touch you? No, I whispered. He exhaled slowly. Good. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Something charged passed between us. Fear, relief, longing. Then he said, almost too quietly, I cannot lose you. The words hit me like a strike to the chest. Before I could respond, he stepped back, regaining his rigid posture. Rest well, he said stiffly, then walked away as if he hadn't just confessed more than he intended. The night it became undeniable. The following week, the Queen Mother relapsed into a severe fever. I stayed at her bedside day and night, cooling her head, spooning water past her cracked lips, massaging her hands until the stiffness eased. Kale visited often, too often for a son who claimed to avoid emotional displays. Each time he stood in the doorway, watching silently as I worked, his face shadowed with something that looked achingly close to tenderness. One evening he pulled me aside. You've not slept, he said. I will sleep when she stabilizes. You will collapse if you do not rest. I shook my head. She needs me. Kale stared at me, really stared. Not like a commander evaluating a servant, but like a man realizing something irreversible. You are, he swallowed. You are remarkable. The words left him raw, unguarded. My breath hitched. Kale. He stepped closer. Do not say my name like that unless you understand what it does to me. My knees weakened. His hand rose, slowly, cautiously, as if asking permission. But he did not touch me. He only let his fingers hover near my cheek, trembling. I cannot take you the way I used to, he whispered. I will not. You deserve more than that. The room fell silent. My heartbeat drowned out everything else. But before anything more could happen, a guard burst in with news about the Queen Mother's condition, and Kale stepped back so fast he nearly stumbled. Yet the truth had already been spoken. We were past pretending, past restraint, past denial. Kale had crossed the threshold, and I was no longer afraid of falling with him. I used to believe that silence was empty. That quiet meant absence of sound, of feeling, of danger. But I learned that silence can be full of tension, full of longing, full of unspoken truths hanging heavily in the air between two people who no longer know how to look away. After Kale confessed that my voice, my simple utterance of his name, unraveled him, something shifted inside both of us. We did not speak of it. We did not dare. But the world suddenly felt too small to contain the weight of what lingered between us. The Queen Mother's recovery and his first real smile. 2 days after her fever broke, the Queen Mother opened her eyes fully and whispered my name. Not child. Not girl. My name. Lyria, she breathed. You stayed. I took her frail hand in mine. Of course I stayed. Kale stood at the foot of the bed, shoulders tense with worry. But the moment he heard her voice, his entire frame loosened. Relief washed over him so visibly it almost weakened my own legs. When the Queen Mother asked for water, he stepped back, allowing me to tend to her. His gaze softened in a way I had never seen before, like watching granite soften into something warm. You saved her, he murmured later, when we walked her to the garden for fresh air. She fought, I replied. And you stayed, he countered. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. Not a smirk. Not the tiny, reluctant curl of lips he offered nobles he disliked. It was a real smile, rare, unarmored. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe, because I realized something simple and terrifying. I wanted to see that smile again, and again, and again, when he started waiting for me. After the Queen Mother improved, Cale began appearing in places he never used to show interest in. The kitchens, the garden paths, the linen hall, the northern stairwell that only servants used. "Alpha, is something wrong?" I asked one morning as he watched me assign tasks to the younger maids. He shrugged, almost sheepish. It was startling to see such a powerful man look unsure. "Nothing is wrong," he said. "I simply wished to see if you required assistance." "Assistance?" I repeated. "From you." He cleared his throat. "Supervision, I mean. Oversight. You do not oversee laundry distribution," I pointed out gently. He frowned. "No, but perhaps I should." It took everything in me not to laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was too tender, too revealing. Cale was not stalking me. He was gravitating toward me, as if the palace had become a map, and I was the point his compass kept returning to. The day he defied the Queen publicly, tension between Cale and his mother had grown thick enough to choke on. She wanted him married to someone noble, someone powerful, someone who could secure alliances. But Cale refused every proposal with curt, brutal efficiency. "Lady Mira of the Eastern Hills is a fine match," the Queen insisted at a council meeting. "No, her lineage is pure wolf." "No, she is willing to bear heirs." I said no. I stood among the servants, lining the wall, pretending not to hear, pretending not to exist. The Queen's eyes snapped toward me, razor-sharp. "And what of the maid you favor?" she accused. "Is she your reason for rejecting every suitable woman?" The room froze. Cale rose slowly, so controlled he looked carved from winter stone. "You will not speak of her," he said quietly. "She is beneath you." "She is under my protection," Cale interrupted, voice like steel drawn from a sheath. "And if anyone in this room dares to shame her again, I will remove them from their post." Gasps spread around the table. My heart lodged in my throat. He didn't look at me, not once. But the message was clear. He had chosen a side, and it was not the Queen's. When he first held me, not out of desire but comfort. That night, I returned to my chamber shaken. The Queen's words cut deeper than I wanted to admit. I had grown stronger under Cale's protection. But part of me still felt like that terrified Omega who had once exchanged her body for coin just to survive. There were nights I still felt dirty, unworthy, replaceable. I sat on my small bed, my hands trembling. A soft knock came at the door. "Lyria." Cale's voice. I stood so fast I nearly tripped. "Alpha." He entered before I could finish. The moment he saw my face, his expression changed, darkened, softened, broke all at once. "She should not have spoken about you like that," he said, voice low. "She had no right." "It is fine," I whispered. "I am used to being—" "Do not finish that sentence." He stepped closer. "Do not ever say you deserve disrespect." I swallowed, feeling small and seen all at once. Then, slowly, as if afraid I might shatter, he lifted his hand and brushed a tear from my cheek with his thumb. The touch was feather-light, reverent. "You are not beneath anyone," he whispered, "least of all me." The dam inside me cracked. A sob escaped, quiet, strangled. I pressed a hand to my mouth, humiliated at the display. Cale stepped forward instantly. Before I realized what was happening, his arms were around me. Strong, warm, careful. He held me against his chest, not with hunger or dominance or the demand of a man taking what he wanted, but with the tenderness of someone terrified of losing something precious. I melted into him, unable to stop myself, my hands gripping his tunic. For a long time, he simply held me while I cried, his chin resting gently atop my head. "I will fix this," he murmured into my hair. "I swear to the moon, Lyria, I will fix all of it." I believed him, because in his arms, for the first time in my life, I felt safe. truly completely safe, and vulnerable enough to admit something impossible. I was falling in love with the Alpha King. I should have known peace could not last. Not in a palace where secrets swirled like smoke. Not in a kingdom where an Omega's worth was measured by silence and obedience. Not when the Queen's resentment had grown teeth. But the truth is this. I had grown comfortable. Too comfortable. Kale had held me. Kale had defended me in front of nobles. Kale had spoken to me with softness I didn't believe he possessed. And for a dangerous moment, I allowed myself to hope. Hope is a fragile thing. It cracks easily. The rumors that spread like fire. 3 days after Kale comforted me in my chamber, the palace was buzzing with whispers. She was in his room last night. No, she was in his bed. No, he held her in the gardens like lovers. An Omega? The future Luna? Impossible. Servants turned their backs when I passed. Nobles looked at me with thin disdain. Even some betas muttered insults under their breath. A maid I once trained sneered openly. You think the Alpha will claim you? He's just using you like the rest. Her words stung, but not because they were cruel, because once, long ago, they had been true, but not anymore. Not with Kale, not with the man he was becoming. Still, rumors are poison, and someone was feeding them deliberately. I knew exactly who. The Queen's trap. Her summons came just after noon. I entered her solar with my spine straight, heartbeat steady, face empty. If she wanted to wound me, she would not see me bleed. The Queen turned from the window, her smile too sweet. You've been busy, Lyria. I bowed. How may I serve my Queen? Oh, you serve enough, don't you? Her gaze sharpened. My son seems unable to function without you. I said nothing. She stepped closer. I warned you to remember your place. And I have, I replied. Then why, she hissed, does the palace believe you are warming the future king's bed? My breath stopped. She had orchestrated this. She had poisoned the halls with lies. Perhaps, she continued, circling me like a vulture, I should send you home. Your mother is ill, is she not? You would be needed there anyway. Fear slammed into me. If she expelled me, my mother's medicine would stop. Our income would vanish. Kale would not even know until it was too late. I forced my voice steady. My Queen, I have done nothing. Silence, she snapped. You will not manipulate my son any longer. The words echoed, ugly, sharp, cruel. Manipulate, as if I had planned any of this, as if I had asked to fall for him, as if I had asked him to fall for me. The Queen lifted her chin. You will leave the palace at dawn. My knees nearly buckled. Unless, she added lazily, you choose to reject the Alpha publicly. Make it clear he means nothing to you, that you feel nothing for him, that he has imagined this attachment. A hollow opened inside me. You want me to lie, I whispered. I want you to disappear, she corrected, voice icy, without damaging his reputation further. My throat tightened. He will know. She smiled. Only if you tell him. She dismissed me with a flick of her hand. I walked out in a haze, my stomach twisting, my chest aching so violently I could barely breathe. Reject Kale? Lie to him? Pretend the bond forming between us did not exist? Or be exiled? Either would break me. The Alpha who found me first. I was halfway down the corridor, barely able to see through the blur of my tears, when Kale appeared at the far end. His shoulders were tense, his stride quick. The moment his eyes found my face, he froze. Lyria, he breathed. What happened? I stopped walking. My whole body shook. He approached slowly at first, then faster when he realized I was trembling. Who hurt you? His voice dropped to a dangerous growl. I shook my head. Kale. Tell me. It doesn't matter. It matters to me. His hands rose to my arms, holding them gently yet firmly, forcing me to look at him. And that was when I broke. A sob tore out of me, quiet but raw. My knees threatened to give way, but Kale caught me before I fell. He swore under his breath and drew me into his chest, shielding me from the world. "Tell me," he whispered against my hair. "Whatever it is, I will fix it." I looked up at him, my voice shaking. "She wants me to reject you publicly." Kale's expression shattered into something primal. His jaw clenched. His eyes glowed. The air around him crackled with barely restrained fury. "She thinks I will allow that," he growled. "She thinks I will let you be cast aside." She said, "I must leave the palace." His hold tightened. "No," he said, one word, absolute. "You are not leaving." "But Kale, I should have done this sooner." His voice dropped, low and unyielding. "You are under my protection. From this moment forward, no one, not my mother, not the nobles, not fate itself, will take you from me." My breath stopped, because he was looking at me not as his maid, not as an omega, not as someone beneath him, but as someone he could not lose. The first time he chose me over the crown. He took my hand, boldly, in full view of passing servants, and led me toward the throne corridor. "Kale, where are we going?" "To end this." "And what?" He stopped, turning sharply to face me. "Everything that keeps you afraid." He squeezed my hand, just once, but the pressure sent heat through my entire body. "Lyria," he said, voice soft but intense. "I should have told you sooner." "Told me what?" He inhaled slowly, fighting the words like they burned him. "I care for you," he said, "more than is wise, more than is permitted, more than I can control." My heart slammed against my ribs. "But tonight," he continued, "I will no longer hide it." He released my hand only to cup my face with both palms, his fingers trembling against my skin. "This kingdom will not decide your worth," he whispered. "I will." My breath caught. "Kale." He leaned closer, his forehead touching mine. "And when the time comes," he murmured, "I will make the entire palace acknowledge you." "How?" I whispered. He pulled back just enough for his eyes to lock with mine. "By choosing you," he said, "openly, publicly, unquestionably." The promise sent a tremor through me, because in that moment I finally believed him. Kale wasn't simply protecting me anymore. He was preparing to claim me. And nothing, not the Queen, not Rogan, not tradition, was going to stop him. I hardly slept the night after finding the Alpha gazing at me as if I were something worth praying for. Those eyes, they trailed me through every dream, tugging, whispering, asking questions I was not yet brave enough to answer. But morning came anyway, and with it a new tension in the palace. Not the dangerous kind, the watching, waiting tension of a kingdom about to be told the truth. It was the night of the late Alpha King's remembrance ceremony, and everyone whispered about it. The halls smelled of polished stone and incense. The Queen Mother, now recovering well, insisted on choosing her own gown. She let me help her dress, her wrinkled hands tapping mine affectionately. "You look radiant, my child," she said, peering into the mirror. "It is good to have gentle souls in this palace again. My son sees it more than he admits." I froze, swallowing the heat rising in my chest. He has been very kind, my lady." My voice wavered. She turned her head, slightly, studying me. "Kindness is not something he gives freely. Do not mistake this for anything small." I wanted to ask her what she meant, but the moment dissolved when the servants announced her carriage was ready. I remained behind for a breath, steadying myself. The palace felt different these days, safer, warmer. He had done that. The Alpha, my Alpha, even if I refused to say it aloud. As evening settled like a velvet cloak over the palace, I took my place among the head servants near the front of the great ceremonial hall. My new position, head maid, still felt unreal. The gown they had tailored for me was simple but finely made, the blue fabric whispering around my ankles. It was the first thing I had ever worn that actually fit me. But none of that compared to the weight of his gaze when he entered the hall. Alpha Kale. My breath abandoned me for a moment. He wore black ceremonial armor trimmed in silver, his dark hair pulled back, his jaw sharp enough to carve fear or devotion equally. Usually he walked like a king who feared nothing. Tonight he walked like a man who had already made a decision that would change everything. His eyes found me instantly. The world seemed to hush. Only when the queen began her speech did he look away. The ceremony was beautiful, somber, filled with stories of the late Alpha King's great reign. But all the while, Kale's jaw clenched, not in grief but anticipation. And then the queen invited him forward. "My son wishes to say a few words," she announced, her voice echoing through the hall. A murmur spread. Even I straightened unconsciously. Kale stepped up onto the dais, towering and unshakable. But when he spoke, his voice was softer than I had ever heard it. "My father taught me many things," he began. "He taught me that strength is meaningless without honor, that leadership is nothing without loyalty, and that a king, no matter how powerful, must be able to choose his own fate." The hall stilled. "And so," Kale continued, his eyes slow but deliberate as they landed on me from across the room, "tonight I choose mine." My lungs forgot how to function. My fingers trembled around the hem of my dress. He kept staring at me. Not the crowd, not his mother, not the nobles. Only me. "I will be taking a mate," he said. The gasps washed over me like a breaking tide. "And the woman I intend to claim is not of noble birth. She is not of noble blood. She is," he paused, his voice lowering into something raw and reverent. "She is the most honest soul I have ever known. She is strong in ways no one else sees. She has cared for those I love when she owed us nothing. She is braver than any wolf in this hall." My legs nearly buckled. "Elara." His voice deepened, fierce with certainty. "Step forward." I didn't move. I couldn't. Not until one of my fellow maids nudged me between the shoulders in a daze, whispering, "Go." The walk down that long aisle felt like a dream. No, a fever. People stared, some whispering in shock, others in disdain. But I didn't see them. I saw him. Kale descended the dais to meet me halfway. His breath was warm when he leaned in. "You can still run, Omega," he murmured. "But I will chase you." My pulse jumped painfully. "Why me?" His lips curved. Not the smirk he wore as a king, but something gentler. Something only for me. "Because you make me want to be better," he said. "Because you make this place feel alive. Because I cannot sleep without wanting to know if you're safe." He cupped my cheek with one gloved hand. "And because I will never let anyone lay a hand on you, not my family, not my council, not fate itself." A tear escaped before I could stop it. His thumb brushed it away. "Say yes, Elara," he whispered. "Give me this." When I opened my mouth, a roar split the hall. Not from the crowd. From the back door, where his cousin staggered in, wild-eyed, clothes torn as if he had been dragged by guards. "This is madness," he shouted, pointing at me with a trembling hand. "She seduced him. She bewitched him, this filthy Omega is." Kale moved before he finished the sentence. One strike. One. The cousin crumpled, groaning on the marble floor. Kale's voice thundered over him. "You will never speak her name again." Gasps rippled through the hall. Guards swarmed instantly, dragging the cousin back as he kicked and spat accusations. But the hall no longer cared about him. They only watched us. Kale turned back to me, his breath rough, his eyes burning with something terrifying and beautiful. "Now," he said softly, as if the interruption meant nothing, "where were we?" My heart was a storm. "You were asking me," I whispered, "to say yes. And will you?" His voice was almost a plea. "Elara, will you be mine?" I could not look away from those eyes, that vulnerability he allowed only me to witness. "Yes," I breathed. "I will." The hall erupted. but all I heard was his exhale, like a man finally allowed to breathe. He pulled me into his arms, not roughly, not as a king claiming a servant, but as a man embracing the one thing he thought he could never have. And in that moment, under flickering candles and ancestral banners, I knew that everything was about to change. For me, for him, for the entire kingdom. The moon hung high behind the stained glass windows, silvering the room as if approving the union. And Alpha Kale, the wolf who swore he would never marry, kissed my forehead gently, reverently, as if I were his fate, and he had finally accepted it. The hall was still trembling from the announcement, echoes of shock, awe, and whispered rebellion rippling from one noble to another. But none of that touched me, not really. My entire world, in that moment, was wrapped in the warmth of Kale's arms and the steady thrum of his heartbeat. The wolf who had never wanted a mate was holding me as if I were something he had spent his whole life searching for. And found. But the serenity did not last, because reality never allows happiness to bloom without testing its roots. It began with raised voices in the corridor beyond the ceremonial hall. Panic, shouting, the unmistakable clang of metal, guards running. Kale pulled slightly away, his expression turning cold and lethal in an instant. "Stay behind me." Before I could answer, the double doors burst open. 2 guards dragged Kale's cousin inside. His face was bruised, his hair wild, eyes red with fury or madness. He fought against the iron grip of the guards until he saw me, and then he laughed. It was a terrible sound, too sharp, too eager. "So this is it," he spat, his lip curling as blood dripped from his mouth. "You choose an Omega over your own blood." Kale stepped forward, voice low and dangerous. "I choose honor over poison." "Honor." The cousin barked out a laugh. "You disgrace the bloodline. For her, she's filth. She's—" He didn't finish. Kale had him by the throat in a heartbeat, slamming him against a column so hard the marble trembled. Gasps rippled across the hall. I could see the cousin's feet barely touching the floor as the alpha's fingers tightened. Kale's voice came out like ice cracking. "Say her name again. Finish that sentence. And I will end you right here, in front of the entire kingdom." The cousin's eyes bulged. He clawed at Kale's wrist, choking, wheezing. For a terrifying moment, I thought Kale might actually kill him. "Kale!" My voice was quiet, but he heard it instantly. The thunder inside him stilled. His head turned sharply toward me, eyes burning, chest heaving. His wolf was inches from shredding everything in sight, but I stepped closer. "I'm safe," I whispered. "Let him face justice, not your rage." His jaw worked, muscles trembling with the effort it took to release his cousin. When he finally let go, the wretched man collapsed to the ground, coughing violently. Kale signaled the guards with a single look. "Take him," the alpha commanded. "Search his chambers, his papers, his contacts, his gold, every shadow he hides in. Bring everything to me by dawn." The cousin screamed as he was dragged away. "You'll regret this, Kale. She'll ruin you. Omegas bring nothing but shame." The door slammed shut on his words. Silence stretched across the hall. Kale turned back toward me, and when he took my hands, the king disappeared. Only the man remained. His voice dropped into a rough whisper. "No one hurts you. No one humiliates you. Not even family." I swallowed hard. "I know." His forehead touched mine for a moment, an intimate, quiet vow sealed without ceremony. And then the night moved forward. The investigation did not take long. By morning, evidence filled the throne room. Documents, threat letters, plans to frame me for theft, bribes given to other servants to ruin my reputation. Even a forged message intended to make it look like I had bewitched the alpha with illegal herbs. Kale's rage was volcanic, but what surprised me most was the Queen Mother. She studied each accusation with a tightening jaw. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of centuries. "This man is a threat to the crown," she declared, "and he is no longer welcome in this palace." The queen stood beside her, stiff, pale, furious. Cale nodded to the guards. "Escort him to the borders. Strip him of his titles. He will never enter my lands again." The cousin screamed, begged, cursed. None of it mattered. Justice had found him. And I felt something inside me loosen. Something that had been tight for years. Fear, perhaps, or the belief that I was always one breath away from ruin. But Cale did not let that feeling linger. He came to me, cupped my chin, and said quietly, "It is finished." For the first time, I believed him. The following weeks passed in a blur of recovery and rebuilding. My mother grew stronger as Cale's healers tended to her daily. The Queen Mother insisted on having me near her constantly, not as a servant, but as a companion. Cale visited me every night, not with coins or desire or secrets, but with soft knocks, gentle words, and a wolfish patience that made my heart ache. It was a slow, tender courtship. He learned how I liked my tea. I learned how he slept, with one arm over his eyes and a soft growl when dreaming. He taught me how to read official scripts. I taught him how to braid his mother's hair without pulling it too hard. We became something that felt like home. And when he finally asked me to walk the palace gardens with him under the full moon, I knew what was coming. He stopped near the willow tree, the oldest in the kingdom, and turned to face me. "Elara." I felt breathless. "Yes." He took both my hands in his voice low and solemn. "Before the moon and the spirits of our ancestors, I vow that I will never shame you, never neglect you, never make you feel small. You are not here to serve me. You are here to stand beside me." My throat tightened painfully. "I will spend every day proving that I deserve you," he continued. "If you'll have me, I want you as my mate, my queen, my equal." Tears blurred my vision, and for once I did not fear their fall. "Yes," I whispered. "Cale, yes." He exhaled like a man saved. Then he pulled me into his arms and kissed me, slow, reverent, desperate, grateful. A kiss that tasted like a promise kept. The wedding was simple. Just the Queen Mother, a few trusted elders, my mother wrapped in a veil of soft wool, and Cale holding my hands as if they were the most precious things in the kingdom. When the officiant asked him to state his vow, he didn't repeat the scripted words. Instead, he looked into my eyes and said, "I was never lost until I met you, and now I never want to find my way without you." I couldn't speak, so I only nodded, tears slipping down my cheeks, and pressed my forehead to his. And that was enough. The kingdom accepted me slowly, cautiously, but Cale never let doubt touch me. Every time someone questioned my place, he stood between us like a wall of steel. Every time I faltered, he lifted me back into certainty. I was no longer the Omega who cleaned floors in the shadows. I was the mate of the Alpha King, and I was loved, truly, fiercely, faithfully. Years later, villagers still tell the story. The Alpha who never wanted a mate. The Omega he protected until he fell in love. The cousin who was cast out. The moonlit garden where vows were whispered. And the queen who rose from nothing to become the heart of the kingdom. But I know the truth better than anyone. It was never a fairy tale. It was two broken souls learning, slowly, painfully, that love is not given. It is built. And Cale and I, we built ours strong enough to last a lifetime.